Chapter 571, Fighting Over One Woman. This chapter is updated by Novels.pl. The memory of Zhu Hongtao slapping Demi Saint Sandow silly was still vivid in everyone's mind. A half-saint had just been beaten up so badly, it was surprising that someone would still dare to try to steal the bride from the Sword Saint disciple. At this moment, Bu Qianfan stood tall and straight, looking very charming as he faced Zhang Yuochen and Huang Yanjun. He seemed enamored, looking at Huang Yanjun with googly eyes as if the world had fallen away around her. On the other hand, Zhang Yuochen, who was standing between Bu Qianfan and Huang Yanjun, was made to look like the third party in the relationship, trying to force them apart. As the monks looked on, they got the impression that Bu Qianfan was really smitten with Huang Yanjun. So he left everything to come and confess his feelings for her, even going so far as to contemplate stealing her for his bride. For a man and a woman to fall in love is simply natural and normal. Bu Qianfan could be excused if he was sincere. After all, there is nothing wrong with falling in love with someone. It was acceptable for him to do crazy things for her in the name of love. Even the barbaric Zhu Hongtao was at a loss. All he could do was tap his chin in thought. He had beaten up Demi Saint Sandow because he was a superior of the older generation. A senior superior who meddles in the marriage of the younger generation should be taught a lesson. However, Bu Qianfan was only a young man in his 20s. As barbaric as he was, Zhu Hongtao was still a saint. He could not bring himself to beat up the youth. Young people should resolve problems amongst themselves. It would be a breach of protocol for elders to interfere. Not only would he be mocked, but it was also not an honorable thing to do. It was now up to Zhang Yuochen to resolve the issue. In terms of fame, both Bu Qianfan and Zhang Yuochen were God's favored sons in the eastern region. In terms of talent, they had both reached the ultimate realm of the four mortal realms. In terms of looks, both of them were handsome and charming in their own way. To top it off, their family backgrounds were comparable. One was Saint Bu Gentry's inheritor, while the other was a Sword Saint disciple. Saint Bu Gentry was currently at the height of its power and splendor. Not even the powerful great saint families, Xu, Zai, Zuo, and Shen, combined could compare to it. Zhang Yuochen and Bu Qianfan were considered the two most excellent youths in the eastern region. Now, they had somehow ended up in contention for the same woman. All of the gods' favored daughters of the Jins were going crazy with jealousy. If the news spread throughout the eastern region, all young ladies would be extremely envious and jealous of Huang Yanjun. Huang Yanjun can't compare to me in beauty, figure, talent, and birth. Why are Zhang Yuochen, the Sword Saint disciple, and Bu Qianfan, the Saint Bu Gentry inheritor, so smitten with her? Chen Lingjun gnashed her teeth and stomped her feet in rage. She's definitely a vixen. What talent does she have other than seducing men? Another god's favored daughter of the Jins commented in frustration. Seeing as Bu Qianfan was being unreasonable, Zhang Yuochen no longer had to remain polite. As Zhang Yuochen gradually emanated spiritual power, the surrounding heaven and earth spiritual chi started to move up and down like waves. Fine purple currents emerged from his soles. They were like tiny snakes that crept outward, gradually covering 10 square meters. Zhang Yuochen exuded an aura of stateliness as he fixed his eyes on Bu Qianfan. Senior sister apprentice is my fiancée. Whoever harbors thoughts of taking her away from me is my enemy. I will not let him off, he said. Swoosh. Following Zhang Yuochen's words, the currents on the ground began to rise like purple fog, condensing into an illusory image of a divine dragon. The divine dragon stood before Zhang Yuochen and issued a deep dragon's roar. Zhang Yuochen's hair and sleeves began to move and flap. The power fluctuation emitted by the illusory image of the divine dragon did not come in the form of a physical attack but in the form of energy condensed out of spiritual power. This was a warning that Zhang Yuochen was sending to Bu Qianfan to stop pushing his luck. All the young warriors of the Chen family and the four great saint families were pushed backward by the powerful energy. It was like an intimidating divine dragon standing before them, striking fear into their hearts. Since Zhang Yuochen was able to condense spiritual power to form the Thunderbolt Dragon Shadow, he must have reached the 42nd level of spiritual power. How is that possible? Isn't Zhang Yuochen majoring in martial arts? How could he have reached the 42nd level of spiritual power at his age? Only the top few youths from the Federation of Inscription and Earth Temple, who are spiritual power geniuses, can reach the 42nd level of spiritual power at such a tender age. The half-saints of the four powerful great saint families could only look at each other in amazement. This was because even the person with the greatest spiritual power amongst the four half-saints had only reached the 42nd level of spiritual power. The strength of Zhang Yuochen's spiritual power astonished many people. Huang Yanchen walked up to Zhang Yuochen from behind, stretched out her delicate jade-like hand and gently held Zhang Yuochen's hand. They stood side by side. This gesture subtly told everyone that she was Zhang Yuochen's fiancée and that Bu Qianfan was just a troublemaker. Zhang Yuochen glanced at Huang Yanchen and smiled gently. Seeing Huang Yanchen's intimate gesture, Bu Qianfan immediately looked crestfallen. He took out his jade fan and coldly said, "If this is the case, let's have a battle. If you lose, you would have to give Miss Yanchen to me." Bu Qianfan was actually trying to ensnare Zhang Yuochen. Regardless of whether Zhang Yuochen defeated Bu Qianfan or not, he would have lost the battle the moment he agreed to fight. Huang Yanchen was, after all, Zhang Yuochen's fiancé. It would be preposterous to make his fiancé the subject of a bet. It was quite a treacherous move. Zhang Yuochen did not fall for Bu Qianfan's trap. "You are going to regret it if you don't stop antagonizing us," he said coldly. "But I insist on a battle." A menacing smile flashed across Bu Qianfan's face as he got ready to fight. He secretly mobilized genuine qi toward the meridians of his arms. As genuine qi traveled through his joints to reach his hands, he struck with his jade fan. Luo Tan's ninth technique. The jade fan flew out and divided into 9 jade rulers with 9 mysterious trails behind them. Each jade ruler was directed toward Zhang Yuochen's vital parts. Each jade ruler was like a sharp sword that emitted 9 trails of sword qi. The sword qi cut through the air, making swish-swish sounds due to friction with the air. A total of 81 shadows of the rulers appeared in the narrow space between Zhang Yuochen and Bu Qianfan. With a thump, the 81 ruler shadows pierced through the illusory image of the Thunderbolt Divine Dragon. Bu Qianfan then converged them and directed them toward Zhang Yuochen's abdomen. All of the spectators were taken aback. Nobody thought that Bu Qianfan could control 9 jade rulers to produce 9 powerful attacks all at the same time. This skill alone was sufficient to defeat the combined efforts of all the monks of the Chen family and the 4 great saint families. Bu Qianfan was one of the 6 great kings of the new generation in the eastern region for a reason. He was truly capable and skillful. Zhang Yuochen did not budge. When the 9 jade rulers were within 3 feet from him, he simply stretched out a hand and then pushed his palm forward. CHCH. Heaven and earth spiritual chi transformed into streams of thunderbolt and then condensed into a purple barrier. As the 9 jade rulers approached the thunderbolt barrier, they slowed to a halt and remained suspended in midair. Crack. All of the jade rulers fell to the ground when Zhang Yuochen retracted his hand. Dispiriting knife technique. Bu Qianfan, who had been a step behind the 9 jade rulers, leapt into the air, stretched out his right arm and then wielded the inferior class ghost-level broadsword technique as if his arm were a sword. He wore a white glove made of scales. His 5 fingers were like sharp knives. As he struck with his palm, 4 light rings emanated from the surface of the white glove. With every ring of light, the power emitted by Bu Qianfan's hand doubled. With 4 rings of light, the power of Bu Qianfan's palm increased 16-fold. Although he had simply pushed with his palm, the power that had come forth was frightening. A 3-foot shadow shaped like a big knife appeared in midair. Zhang Yuochen frowned. Zhang Yuochen would not have been surprised if it turned out that Bu Qianfan's cultivation had already reached the first change in the fish-dragon realm. However, Bu Qianfan seemed too strong for someone in the first change in the fish-dragon realm. This was beyond Zhang Yuochen's impression of Bu Qianfan's capabilities. Zhang Yuochen had fought with Bu Qianfan once before. Although on that occasion both of them had not given their best, Zhang Yuochen had gained insight into Bu Qianfan's strengths and weaknesses. Did he deliberately hide his strength that time? Zhang Yuochen began to doubt. Even if Bu Qianfan's strength and capabilities were now beyond Zhang Yuochen's previous estimation, Zhang Yuochen was not afraid. The fact was, Zhang Yuochen had already reached the second change in the fish-dragon realm. That aside, even if Zhang Yuochen were only at the first change in the fish-dragon realm, he would still win unless Bukyon Fan had a hidden trump card. Otherwise, how could he possibly kill Zhang Yuochen? Zhang Yuochen pressed his index and middle fingers together to make a sword finger and then concentrated the power of the heart of the sword to his fingertips. Ripples of energy waves started to emanate from the two fingers. Swish! With lightning speed, Zhang Yuochen punched toward Bukyon Fan. The glove Bukyon Fan is wearing on his right hand is a formidable weapon. Is Zhang Yuochen not afraid that his finger would break if he takes on Bukyon Fan with bare hands? It won't just be his fingers, even his arm might get broken. Everyone began to feel nervous and worried for Zhang Yuochen.